It's 2:30 in the morning. Um, my cat is running around my feet. He's upset that I'm moving at this hour. I don't blame him. I'm upset that I'm up at this hour after a big steaming pile of shit was delivered directly to my eye sockets and ears. When it comes down to it, anime has been part of my life since before any real memories. Now I'm not gonna go into the whole speech about Pokemon and how Pokemon's been around since like 1998, and I was like 6. That's obvious. Everybody's had Pokemon. Everybody's had those anime they didn't realize were anime. They had their Sailor Moons, and if you were a little bit older, you had your Hamtaros, etc., etc. And I don't want to be that fucking dude that says, anime's been with me forever because I didn't even realize I was watching it. It was great. No, 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 no. Anime has been with me since about the same time as pretty much anyone around my age. You one day you stay up a little bit later than you should have, and you sat down and you watched some goddamn original um, Adult Swim block, and they hit you with that Yu Yu Hakusho Outlaw Star Inuyasha. Inuyasha was my introductory anime because it was the first one that actually introduced me to anime where I was just like, you know what, I actually have to watch more of this. Whatever this is, I need more of it. And I consumed it as best I could. I have an unreasonable amount of manga in my basement. It's actually mostly my sister's, but we shared because she got the good stuff and I didn't. I got Shonen Jump, she got manga, but whatever. Okay, so Death Note is actually the first anime that I actually went out of my way to sit down and binge in one sitting. I remember when it first came to America, it was the first episode that I actually watched was the episode before the woman decided to kill herself because he made her. He Oh, by the way, for the rest of anybody that would be listening that hasn't seen Death Note, fucking spoilers, spoilers up the ass. There's spoilers everywhere. Whatever. Anyway, I remember watching that scene. Where Light Yagami is like, trying to gather as much information as he can before he ultimately decides he's got to kill this chick, and that was some thrilling stuff. It was riveting, and I was like, holy shit, man! I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna start from the beginning. And I sat down and I watched all of it from start to finish in one sitting. I got a bag of rice out of my fridge, and some Italian dressing, if I'm not mistaken. And I sat in my father's office watching it illegally, of course, at the time, back to back to back in Japanese. Um, Never been a really. I've always been more pro dub, if I can get it. Unless it's a really girly anime, like for example, if it's something like Clan Ad, you should never watch that in English because it's unbearable. But dubs versus subs is up for another day. No big deal. Moving on. Okay, so Death Note. I remember I was sitting there and I was watching it. My family was asking me, "Hey, are you gonna get up?" It was summer vacation. I was like, "No, it's not happening. This is some gripping shit." And what I liked the most about it was the fact that even though, it did hit that decline midway through. Um, Everything from start to finish made it good. The music really set the stage for the character that was Light Yagami. It was all really religious because he had like his own little god complex thing going on. They had the creation of man or whatever that painting was, the beautiful one where God is touching the finger of other man and all that stuff. In the intro, the theme song was outstanding. Well, the OP, the first one, and even then the second one was still really good, but it just wasn't my kind of thing. I know a lot of people really enjoyed it. It just wasn't for me. But regardless, you know, it was just good. It was always good. I was always excited for what may happen next, and I was always on the edge of my seat. At the time, it was actually it was like a mini couch thingy. It was like a love seat that I had pulled out of my family room, moved into my office so that I didn't have to sit in a wooden chair for a full day. But I remember I sat down and watched it, and I was like, oh my god, Light is he's so smart, he's so methodical. It's a little bit uncharacteristic of somebody his age, but it works. It makes sense. The guy's been studying this kind of thing most of his life. His father's been in the police department for his entire life, so it's what he knows. And L was kind of weird, a little bit of a sociopath, but it worked. He was awkward, but he wasn't like too awkward. He had his own weird eating habits, and the way that he sat that weebs everywhere did for God knows how long, because it quote unquote optimized their ability to think. We all know that's bullshit, and whatever. But moving on, everything about that show, every character had some resonance, some importance, something good to offer. Even I can't remember all the characters' names now because it's been a while. I haven't watched it since I was in high school. I watched like the first four episodes in preparation for watching the actual Netflix movie, and that was approximately it was about 2 months ago. I don't remember basically any of the cops' names, but it just happens that way. Most of the time when I watch something in Japanese, I forget all the characters' names because I'm not really listening to them talk. I'm just reading anyway. But watching it, watching watching what I just saw, uh, I know that they weren't going for the one for one on this one. This was not supposed to be interchangeable. A localization of Death Note for Americans, so that it was a little bit more, for our audience. It was supposed to be basically its own thing, with the skeleton that was Death Note. But it just I wanted it to work really bad, even though I knew it was going to be bad. But oh my god, jeez, it was bad. Light is complete opposite of who he is in the anime. In the manga, in the anime he's a really strong character. He knows where he is in life. He's smarter than that of everybody else. He knows he's smarter. He knows he's good looking. He knows he can get the ladies if he wants to. He uses that to his advantage. He's good with people. He's kind of sociopathic, but it's like a good kind where he can basically manipulate people. He's good at everything. He's like the perfect guy, which is exactly why it's great that he is the villain that he becomes, because ultimately he is a villain, by law. Uh, he's got good intentions in heart, but he's still a murderer, and he knows that, which comes down to that whole "what is justice" conversation that he has with himself and with other people throughout the anime. They say it a lot, um, but this character that they introduced, this Light Turner, is the exact opposite of Light Yagami, in the sense that he is weak from the beginning. It is understood that he is weak, and he is easily manipulated by everybody he interacts with, which is just pitiful, because that's the exact opposite of who he was. He manipulates Misa in the anime, 24/7. She's so whipped by this dude that she's like openly aware that he's faking his love for her just so that he can get a couple more names in that friggin' book. Um, but in this, it's basically Ryuk kind of pushes him towards, hey, do it, even though Light chose to do it himself out of morbid curiosity, and then after he realized that the effects were accurate, he just kept going because he realized that he could do everything in his power to become the god of his world, and save the problem of crime and eliminate it. Because it's kind of like the Walter White thing, where in the beginning you have good intentions, but by the end you're kind of just a dick. But Light Turner, on the other hand, is this weak, sorry character. It's not exactly well acted either, so it's just it's painful on the eyes. But that it's a Netflix movie, so I didn't expect much. But even then, Light Turner being the way that he was really, it really took it out for me, because if they were going to leave one character the way that he was, it would have been really good. If they left Light that way, messed around a little bit, maybe Americanized things a little bit, that's fine. But don't mess with Light too much, because he is the staple of the show. He the manga as well. I only read a bit of the manga in Shonen Jump before I stopped buying Shonen Jump because it was really expensive over time. But so I'm basically just going to be referring to the anime from this point forward. And fantastic. I totally just yeah, that was good. But when I saw that he was the way that he was, I was already kind of disappointed. But as time went on, I noticed that every character is almost like it's like opposite day. You know, his dad in this movie is a pretty good detective, like his father was in the anime. But he's not very suspect of anything. He doesn't want to listen to anybody, which is totally not what his dad was like. Even until his father's last breath, he was still kind of suspect of Light at times. He didn't want to believe it, but he knew that it was a potential possibility. This guy is, my son is, an angel. He would never do anything. And, I'm just hitting on his dad because he's an easy character to discuss. There's not really much to say. He's just kind of like there because police involvement, you need that. Otherwise, it's not the same. And then you have obviously your Misa Amano, and I've already forgotten her name. It's Mia Sutton. Uh, yeah, it took a while for me to dig that one out of my brain, but Mia Sutton is actually almost Light Yagami. If you were to take like the smarts away from Light Yagami, all the manipulative stuff that he would do throughout the anime is what she's doing throughout this movie, which I thought was really odd because she's kind of a dunce and she's like a model, so obviously she doesn't really need the smarts. And in the anime, she really didn't. She had a purpose for wanting what she wanted. She wanted, the death of everybody because she'd been wronged in the past, and she feel like she had been saved, and she wanted to bring that to more people. And she really loved Light for what he was doing. In this one, she's just kind of like addicted to the idea of murdering as many people as possible. There's no justice. There's no reasoning. She's just kind of like this is like a really long form Columbine for her. She's just like kind of gets off on it, and she gets off on like making Light do it, which is really odd. And they kind of linger on the sexual aspect of the relationship for slightly too long in that scene where they kind of introduce that they've been basically just like murder porning it. Um, it's like they're making their own snuff in its own way. It's super it's surreal how weird they took this. And Willem Dafoe did a really good job. I really liked his depiction of Ryuk because he's you know pretty decent from what the character they made Ryuk into. Ryuk didn't look good, but again, I didn't expect much. Netflix, budget and all that nonsense. You know, I think Willem Dafoe in Beyond Two Souls was scarier than Ryuk in this, but it happens. His voice acting though, his Willem Dafoe's voice is really menacing, which works for Ryuk. It's always been a thing. Like Ryuk, even though he was never really supposed to be all that scary, you're supposed to be a constant reminder that he's a death god, and that's the way that things are. So good reminder there. Um, I just I couldn't, and I got to hit on L because L happened, and I was kind of taken aback when they decided that they were going to make L black. I'm not trying to be all, you can't just do that, yeah. But it was kind of weird choice. It was weird that they took this to America in the first place, because they kind of like poke at it where he decides that he's going to name himself Kira. Light does, but then like he's like, well, because it's kind of like killer in Japanese, but it's not, and they try to like make it a little bit more reasonable. I mean, don't get me wrong, it kind like the reasoning behind it, from what I understand, is that Kira sounds like killer and like killer. It's close enough, but it's not. It says in the movie that it's a colloquialism for actual killer, which I can honestly tell you, it's probably not. It's definitely not. It just kind of sounds like it. The Japanese really suck at their L's and their R's, and we all know here where we are at this point because of it. So when I saw L, I was like, okay, it's kind of odd that they went with this black dude. I saw him in Get Out very recently. I just very recently saw Get Out, amazing movie, And I was like, I'll give this guy a chance. And L was the other obvious staple of Death Note, even after his passing, his unfortunate erasing. Uh, he he was a necessary character the way that he was because he was socially awkward. He was really weird. He ate all the time, but it wasn't like it was never too much. It was never too cringy. Like this was like almost like a caricature of the character where they almost tried to make L, but they bumped him up to 11 where he's got like it's like he's got Asperger's or something. He's like super weird with people, which L was, but not this weird. He talks in this strange manner where it's almost like accented, but it's not. He when he eats stuff, he's like a slob, and L wasn't like the most disgusting person ever like that. He didn't wear shoes, but otherwise, no. And I thought that was a really weird take on him. Um, ultimately, what it comes down to is everybody felt, so different, and yet some characters felt too similar, some characters felt too different. But ultimately, what you're doing is you're taking something that everybody knew was a certain way, you turn it on its head, and then you present it in a way, you put the name on it, and obviously it's not going to be agreed upon if it's any good. Now, I'm coming at this from the perspective that Death Note is probably one of my favorite anime ever. It's not my favorite, but it's one of the favorites. And it's kind of hard to come at it from not a point of bias. But like I gotta be real with you, this was not good. It just felt, it looked cheap. It felt cheap. There's some pretty good special effects in the sense of like it didn't look like they used special effects. It looked like CGI. It looked like they used practical effects sometimes, which was really good. And other times it didn't, which was pretty weak. I've heard of none of these people in this movie except Willem Dafoe and obviously the guy from Get Out. And the only reason I recognize him is because I just saw that movie. But otherwise, I don't think I've seen him in anything else. I guess I gotta go out and see more movies with black guys in it. I'm missing out. I gotta stop watching anime. There are no black people in anime. But this was just such a mess, and it's hard to actually say what the issue was because there were so many different things wrong. From a story perspective, it just didn't really work because it made sense and it didn't. It was like Light was not remorseful about the way that he was from the things that he was doing, but he was. And yet at the same time, he was trying to get away with it, but then he wasn't. He wanted in and he wanted out. He wanted his girlfriend. That was the weirdest part of it. He just wanted his girlfriend to approve of him and all this stuff, which Light Yagami never needed approval because when you break it down, Light Yagami is just a really, really sophisticated sociopath. So it was just strange to see, Misa Amano as Mia Sutton wearing the pants of Light Yagami, while Light Yagami wears the pants of Misa Amano, while at the same time still attempting to be who he was. And then you have, L, who flies off the handle all over the place, which again is really strange, because he's such an in control character. Even when he's kind of inconvenienced, even when he's kicking Light's ass, if we all remember that scene where they're handcuffed together and they're just kicking the shit out of each other, L still puts down that ass beating without making it look like he's out of control. This L is he's all over. He's trying to kill him. He's chasing him down. The only thing that I think they got right was the fact that he openly approaches Light and it's like, okay, well, I know you're doing it. And that's good because, that was something that did happen. But the way that he goes about it and the way that everything goes down, it was just so disjointed and so gross. It felt just like it was disappointing and it was actually just kind of upsetting. Now, mind you, I'm making this. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. It's 3:01. Gotta stop putting timestamps on everything. It really just shows how much stuff I'm doing in a day. Nothing. But I couldn't turn down the opportunity to really just look at this and I wanted it to be good. I remember when I saw the trailer, I was really talking to a lot of my friends and I was like, "Hey guys, there's a possibility. I don't like the fact that this is happening. I don't, but there's a possibility it could still be good." So understand that I'm going to be going into this with a lukewarm kind of look, but it's going to be okay. I think we'll be all right. It will still be okay. It'll be serviceable. And ultimately, that's what it was. It was serviceable, but I would say it's more of a 4 than it is a 5. It's not average, it's slightly below average. And I don't want to, like, it's super hard to not talk from a bias, which is exactly why, at this point, I'm just going to give my opinion. I didn't like this movie. It wasn't fun for me to watch. I put myself through it just because I wanted to be able to say I tried, like 50 Shades of Grey or Twilight. I don't like hating things for no reason. This was one of those things where I just hated it, and I don't think I'm gonna trust anime movies for a while because we've had our chances. For example, we had our Dragon Ball Evolution, and for Jeff Thu or whatever from Mother's Basement, he likes to think that Avatar is an anime. Well, then he has to accept the fact that M. Night Shyamalan made one of the shittiest anime movies of all time, and now this is well within the roster of bad ones. Don't get me wrong, video games, they have their weak spots too, because the Tekken movie was absolutely atrocious. You have the weak Mortal Kombat movies. You have anything by Uwe Boll. Resident Evil hasn't been good ever. I don't know why people keep thinking it was. I think Silent Hill was my favorite video game movie ever. But this was something I was excited about, even though my expectations were low, because I wanted my expectations to be shattered, because I set the bar low so that I could see this go well. I wanted it to do well. And ultimately, it did nothing but let me down and disappoint. It was just so cringy. Everything about it. Like, in the beginning of the movie, Light Turner, he's being picked on by some people because he decides that he's going to fight back for somebody, which is something that Light probably wouldn't do. And of course, my cat is meowing now because he wants attention and love. But Light, he he gets the shit kicked out of him at the beginning of this movie, and I thought it was well warranted because you have that kid that's like, oh yeah, well if you hit me, this'll happen, and then somebody kicks the shit out of him, and I was like, oh thank God, because if this went on for any longer, I would have probably had a fucking aneurysm. This was disgusting. Just the dialogue, the performance, the way that it was done, the way it was said, it was perfectly cringy, but that doesn't mean I wanted to see it. I mean, like, the Cringe Network on Facebook is a perfect place for me to get my cringe. If I need any more cringe, I can find it there. There it was. But this was just epic amounts of cringe. This whole thing from start to finish. There was like the giant weird just hole where Ryuk shows up and he's like, hey, use the Death Note, which again I still have an issue with, but when he shows up, he completely obliterates a classroom. I don't understand why he would do that because Ryuk isn't one for fanfare or making a big deal out of his own presence. But he completely wrecks this classroom, and after he does so, there's just a completely wrecked class. When he sees it, he gets up and they just jump scenes. And his father acknowledges the fact that his son is in detention. He's like, hey, you were in detention. What were you in detention for? But they completely gloss over the fact that this classroom has been wrecked like nothing I've ever seen before. It looks like, like my second week of boot camp when they were flipping mattresses and throwing them out of windows and shit. That was unimaginable. And yet somehow he completely just got away with that. And then there's the fact that, Light Turner has a conversation with Ryuk in their kitchen, and Ryuk has gone through like 12 apples at this point. They're all over the floor. He goes straight upstairs. I know Ryuk isn't going to throw out his trash because he's more of a devil may care Ryuk than he was in the anime. So they're just laying there. His father's not going to ask any questions about that. It's a lot of nitpicks, but it's like stuff that you would notice. Like, this is something that I myself, I'm no critic, but this is something that I see, and I have to, you gotta wonder, why is Mia so fucking nuts? Like, why? She has no reasoning for that. She has no real background. She doesn't seem like she's in it for the help. She just seems like she's in it for the murder porn. She just wants people dead, and I think that's like part of her arc, that you gradually see that she's becoming more and more of a villain. But it's even weirder that she becomes the villain because that role is shared between both Light and Misa in the anime. But here, it's like she just kind of takes the spotlight on it, and and now you're almost sympathetic for the insane psychopath that is, Light, uh, for him trying to back out of this, and it's almost acknowledged in the film because Elle takes a seat and is like, "Hey, you did all this." And then you say that you did it, and then you try to back out of it like you didn't just kill 400 people. And he's like, "Well, it's deeper than you understand." It's like, I get it. It's perfect in a sense. I almost said this. Like, this is like, it sounds like a high schooler wrote this, but at the same time, it is a high schooler delivering it, the characters in high school. Now, mind you, Light is an adult by the conclusion of Death Note. In this, he's a high schooler the whole time, so I guess they're really just slathering on that immaturity. But Light was never really all that immature, which made it even harder to swallow this bitter pill that was this movie. And I'm trying to find something good about it, but it was like by the end of the movie, the choices in the music made it seem like they were trying to be campy, but why would you try to be campy 3/4 of the way through a movie? That just seems like a weird decision to me. Why would you decide that you were going to take this way less seriously after that you've set the stage that it's going to be serious? At the beginning, I was almost like, no, this seems like it would be it's almost kind of setting the stage as if it's a scary movie. Got about halfway through it, and it's almost cheesy and weird. You know, the music really doesn't work for it. It makes it seem as though they're just making fun of these people dying. And I understand that in the anime, people dying, they hit on it, but it's really not. It is the core of the show, but it's a detail that's necessary, but they don't make a big deal about the fact that people die because at this point it's an afterthought that in Light's mind. He's like, oh, he's deleted. Later, Mikami literally says deleted. He doesn't even consider them people. They're just, existences that are being deleted. So it was so odd. There were so many different choices they could have made. It would have been completely fine if you could have gone with Black L and you could have gone with American Light, but you got to make them a little bit more smarter. I mean, smart, a little bit more smarter. Listen to me, Jesus. You got to make him smarter. You got to give him a little bit more of a backbone. You got to make him a little bit more charismatic because he just doesn't work as this pitiful character. Because if he was this sad, he wouldn't be in it in the first place. Even his girlfriend calls him a pussy at the end of the movie, and that's sad because that just doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work. I'm gonna give this movie a personal rating of a 2 out of 10. I'm gonna give this movie by movie standards probably about a 4, maybe a 5. Actually, I'm gonna set it at a hard 5. It's an average movie. If you have no knowledge of the franchise itself, you could probably sit down, watch it, quote unquote, enjoy it. Tell somebody else to watch it. That person probably already seen it because Death Note's in the Madhouse anime, so everybody's seen it. It's legendary. It's one of the best anime of all time, according to the worst sources ever, such as My Anime List and my personal opinion. But it if you find that guy that's been into it before, hey, I've watched Death Note. You recommend that to him, he might punch you in the fucking teeth because he's probably seen it by now. I actually don't know when this came out. I just kind of happened upon it, and now that I've seen it, I regret it. This was absolutely horrendous. I never wish to see anything this bad again. I knew Ghost in the Shell was going to be bad, so I skipped it. And then I just watched a shit ton of reviews, and I knew exactly what was going to happen, and it happened. Now here we are with the exact same scenario. Good God, please stop. Don't do this again unless you know what you're doing going in. If you like, I know that they were talking about making a Cowboy Bebop film for a while. I know Fullmetal Alchemist is getting a live action film. The Japanese, they can do whatever they want because they're going to keep to the source material. If they ever do a Cowboy Bebop film, it's this bad, I may never watch a movie again. So please don't do that to me because I love movies. Thank you for tuning into Ham Hub. I'm just going to upload this one off the brain, just as it is. A flat image. Like and subscribe. Let's talk about it. Let's get into this because this is an atrocity. I'll see you guys later.